Meet the Mets, meet the Mets. Step right up and greet the Mets. Bring your kiddies, bring your wife. Guaranteed to have the time of your life, because the Mets are really socking the ball, knocking those home runs over the wall. East side, west side, everybody's coming down to meet the METS Mets of New York town. Oh, the butcher and the baker and the people on the streets, where do they go? To meet the Mets! Oh, they're hollering and cheering and they're jumping in their seats. Where do they go? To meet the Mets! All the fans are true to the orange and blue, so hurry up and come on down, 'cause we got ourselves a ball club, the Mets of New York town. Give 'em a yell, give 'em a hand, and let 'em know you're rooting in the stand. Come on and meet the Mets, meet the Mets. Step right up and greet the Mets. Bring your kiddies, bring your wife. Guaranteed to have the time of your life, because the Mets are really socking the ball, knocking those home runs over the wall. East side, west side, everybody's coming down to meet the METS Mets of New York town, of New York town.
What's up, Mets fans? Welcome back to Talking Mets with Rob, and good morning to everybody on this new direction of our New York Mets, as the New York Mets will be introducing David Stearns as their new president of baseball operations. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for hanging out this morning. And for everybody, and I can hopefully speak for all the Met fans, David Stearns needed to be a part of this organization, not just because we all think he's done a good job with Milwaukee Brewers, but the constant hearing that this is who Steve Cohen wanted for basically 2-3 years now. He's finally going to be a part of the Mets organization. And as good as the job he's done in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, let's see what he does here. And he already started, in my opinion, on a bad way yesterday. There was no reason to fire Buck before that game, or let me not say fire, but let's be honest. Fire Buck. No matter if you liked Buck or not, that was one of the worst ways you could have gone about it. Basically, he was flying into New York while Buck Showalter was into that press conference. So basically, Buck Showalter told you he didn't speak to David Stearns. Billy Epler was the one that told Buck Showalter they're going in a new direction. Again, I'm okay with it. It is what it is. You didn't do well this year at all with the highest payroll in baseball, even though that really doesn't matter. The fact of the matter is that the players did not perform, and you can't fire the players, so you got to fire people that you can actually fire. And Buck Showalter was one of those guys. So, unfortunately, the Mets have to go in another new direction. And sooner or later, this team, this executive staff, this coaching staff, they need to have stability. I said this all season long when people wanted to just fire Buck Showalter, fire Billy Epler. At some point, you need stability in the organization, because it never works out. Because when you constantly bring in new faces every 2 to 3 years, that GM that comes in might not like certain players this GM brought, a prior GM brought in. So now he might not like a manager. He might not like certain players that were drafted. He might not like certain free agents that was brought in. And then they change it to the way they like it. And then it's a constant recycle of a team and an organization. There's no stability. And then we wonder why there's no good developmental staff that needs to be within an organization, right? And we wonder why prospects come up and fail 9 out of 10 times. Because when there's no stability at the top of the organization, it trickles on down. It trickles on to the coaching staff. It trickles down to the minor league staff, and then eventually trickles down to the minor leaguers and prospects and Major League Baseball players on the Mets. That is the problem that we really have to consider. At some point, ladies and gentlemen, this team needs to have stability within the organization from top to bottom. Now, hopefully David Stearns is that guy. He got a brand spanking new 5-year contract, one of the highest paid executives in baseball. He's got to prove it. And you know what? I don't care if you're from New York. I don't care if you're a Mets fan. I don't give a damn if you're a Braves fan. I don't care. If you come to New York and there's 100 microphones in your face instead of the 3 he had in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, it's a lot harder to deal with. And we'll see what he's going to do. We'll see if he wins the press conference. And I think we've seen that before. When you win a press conference, doesn't mean you're going to do well running an organization. We saw Brody Van Wagenen, who said all the right things, but didn't know his ass from an elbow for being a general manager, right? At some point, again, we have how many? Let's see. We had Scott, we had Porter, we had Brody, we got Sandy, and we have Billy Epler. 5 GMs over what? A 4 or 5 year span? It's got to stop. How many managers over the last 5 years? It's got to stop. From Terry Collins to Mickey Callaway to Luis Rojas to Buck Showalter and now another manager. So we had 4 managers in 5 years, 5 GMs in 5 years, in about 6 years or so. At some point, it's got to stop. It's got to stop. You got to have stability because you can't expect prospects to develop if you're constantly changing over executives and staff and everything else, and you expect the players just to come up and be great. At some point, it is up to the players, absolutely, but there's got to be stability within the organization. And I think that's why a lot of again, for all the people that say, oh, the Mets players didn't play for Buck Showalter, did you see yesterday? Did everybody watch the game yesterday or hear about it? Every one of the players got out of the dugout and gave a standing ovation to Buck Showalter when he gave up the lineup card. Don't tell me that team did not play for each other. How about the players actually sucked when it mattered? That's not, because if you're not going to give credit for Buck Showalter for 2022, don't blame him for 2023 because that makes no sense. If you can give all the credit to the players in 2022, blame the players in 2023. That's how it works because managers are very fickle nowadays. They're very nonchalant. They're basically not as important as they used to be. Again, do they make certain decisions that piss you off? Absolutely. But if the same decision you didn't agree with when it happened worked out, all of a sudden he's a genius? No. All right? That's how it goes. The point of the matter is there's got to be stability from the top to bottom. There's no denying that the teams like the Dodgers, the Astros, even though the Astros, they technically fired people because of the whole thing, but the Dodgers, right? The Yankees, right? Even though a lot of people can't stand the Yankees and they haven't won anything, they're constantly in the playoffs, right? Teams like that, the Tampa Bay Rays, they keep their staff, their executives in order, right? They don't fire people, right? It's just stability matters, right? Keeping guys in place matters. And I'm not saying Buck Showalter deserved or did not deserve to stay with this team. Right, he was going to be a 1-year rental basically if he was going to manage next season, right? I didn't like how Stearns already went about it. There was no need for Buck Showalter to read on a piece of paper why he's stepping down when we all know he didn't want to, right? David Stearns needed to wait until the season was over, right? How about actually having your press conference and then doing your job? I just didn't understand that. Now, in all likelihood, I believe Craig Counsell is going to be the manager of the Mets. And again, Craig Counsell, look how good he's been. Has he? Have you watched the Brewers postseason? He's had a lot of problems in the postseason, and a lot of it's because of him, right? Because people don't want to actually watch other teams and watch the way he manages. He is absolutely dog crap in the postseason. He takes his starters out too early, and he loves to go to the bullpen, and that's a problem a lot of times because I just don't like that type of managing. And where have the Brewers have been, right? They made the playoffs, but again, are you going to give the manager credit or are you going to give the players credit? Like, we can't pick both. It's either one or the other. Well, easy. That's what I agree with. Like I said, I'm not mad that they got rid of Buck Showalter. I understand the new guy wants his own guy. I'm fine with that. I'm cool with that. I have no problem with that at all. But do it the right way because you already look like a fool and it's an awkward situation. And I'm going to tell you this right now. All the love and fear for David Stearns, what if he thinks that Pete Alonso should be traded and shouldn't give him that long-term deal? How about that? I guess everybody's going to love him then, right? Yeah. Don't think he won't do that because I have a pretty good idea and I'm pretty sure that he was one of the guys. And obviously we all know he was probably talking to the Mets way before all this has happened. Don't think for a second that information about Pete Alonso with the Brewers and the Mets, don't think that didn't have something to do with David Stearns. So let's be careful with that. Let's be careful with that. So we're just going to be waiting for the press conference any minute. I'm assuming they're going to show it on SNY. I know it's all on their social media accounts. As soon as it starts going on, I will play the audio and you guys can listen to it. They're showing the game from yesterday, which I unfortunately watched and stood there and watched the whole game. And at least I had fun with a lot of my friends at the tailgate. That was important because you usually don't see a lot of these people until next year, or at least until the spring training comes around. So there we go, guys. So we are going to see if SNY turns over to the press conference, and it looks like they're going to. Let's see. All right, here we go. Special coverage from SNY. So we're just waiting and listen up real quick. This is Gary Apple, Todd Zeal, Andy Martino.
Andy Martino as the Mets are getting set to introduce David Stearns as their new president of baseball operations. That is a new title inside the organization. And Stearns, 38 years old, a New York native from the Upper East Side, is the man for the job. Let's begin.
Looking guy, thank you. I appreciate that.
Take you out to the news conference as soon as it gets underway. But why David
Stoney?
Stearns?
I think we should.
The right guy for this job.
Well, ever since Steve Cohen came in, Gary, with Stady Alderson,
Nick, I hope it's good.
Group, he was very clear that he wanted to hire a president of baseball operations. So that's really where it starts, is that he never wavered from that goal. Why David Stearns specifically? Well, there were a number of other highly regarded executives that Cohen was interested in over the years, whether it was Farhan Zaidi in San Francisco or some others that are kind of billed. And I guess we're going to hear from David Stearns to tell us a little bit about himself right now.
Yes, indeed. Let's go out to the news conference. We head for Citi Field right now.
All right, here we go, guys. Listen up. It's already starting.
Officially, I just wanted to talk a little bit about, obviously what transpired with Buck, and just want to make clear that I kind of orchestrated all of this. I wanted to, I wanted to, handle Buck in the way he wanted to be. He wanted to go down, and then obviously, with David on Monday, and then you have the MLB playoffs coming up, and so the window of opportunity to do this was kind of short, and so that's how we did it, and I obviously appreciate all that Buck did for the organization and for me, and so that's that, and so now I'm here to introduce David Stearns, our president of baseball operations. I'm really excited by this. It's I've been really patient, looking for the right person. As Dave and I got to know each other, I mean, it's clear that we were aligned in our thinking. We get along very well. It was so interesting when I was doing the due diligence on David. I've never seen. I do a lot of due diligence in my hedge fund, and I've never seen such universal, congratulations and saying you've got to hire this guy. I mean, that's pretty extraordinary. There was one instance when I was at an MLB meeting, at the dinners that MLB's holding. I'm sitting at the bar and two people come up to me and go, "You got to hire this guy." Okay, unsolicited. And so, that I think that demonstrates how much respect David has in the industry. And I'm just so excited to have him on board and, to bring on the next chapter of the Mets. So I'm going to give it to David now.
Thanks.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
Yeah. Congratulations.
Thank you everyone for coming today. It's felt like over the last couple of weeks we've been inching towards this day a little bit for me. So I'm certainly thrilled we're finally here, and I finally get to be here and get going. I want to start by thanking Steve and Alex. Throughout this process, really from the time we started talking, became evident to me that not only do they have a real clear desire to win here, but they really understand that our franchise can impact our community. I think they understand that a sports franchise is not a normal business, and that we have the ability to affect millions of people's lives by how we operate. And so I'm thrilled to partner with them. I also want to thank Mark Ignacio and the entire Brewers organization. I spent 8 wonderful years in Milwaukee. I had a lot of fun. We had some success together. And I made relationships that are going to last my entire life. And I'm very thankful and grateful for that. I want to thank my friends and family, my wife Whitney, our kids, Nora and Austin. It's meaningful for me. It's cool for me that our kids get to grow up Mets fans now. That we get to share that. That we get to live this journey together, and they get to experience a little bit of what I experienced as a kid growing up as well. At the top, I do want to touch on our managerial situation and the events of yesterday. I have a tremendous amount of respect for Buck, what he has accomplished globally throughout his career, and specifically what he's done in this town. I think as many of you know, up through yesterday, I was under contract with another team, and so I wasn't allowed to talk to Buck. I reached out to him this morning, and I'm hopeful that we're going to be able to connect. I'm very appreciative of what he's meant to this organization, and I think unquestionably the organization is in a better spot for him having been here. As we move forward, I know there are going to be plenty of questions about my philosophies, what I'm aiming to bring here, how we're going to accomplish our goals, and certainly I'll answer all those to the best of my ability today and going forward. What I will say at the front end here is operationally, what we're going to try to do is build groups of really talented people at all levels of the organization. People who care deeply about each other, people who care deeply about the Mets, and people who are energized coming to work every single day and working with each other. I'm certain that many of those people are here already. And over time, I also think we'll have the opportunity to bring in other really talented people who want to join us. I also want to dispel any notion that there's any magic formula to this, that there are shortcuts or there's a secret sauce. There isn't. There aren't certainties in baseball. There are no guarantees of results. But I think we can guarantee that we're going to work really hard. I think we can guarantee that we're going to explore every single angle to make our team better. And I think we can guarantee an environment here for everyone associated with the Mets, our players, our staff, coaches, front office, here and really around the world, an environment where they feel connected to the overarching mission of the organization and where they feel empowered to affect the direction of our organization. And it's been my experience and certainly my observation that when we do those things well, And when we focus on those types of things, that generally leads to success and results. I know how much this team means to our fans and our community. I grew up listening to Gary Cohen and Bob Murphy and Ed Coleman every summer. I've ridden the roller coaster of disappointment and hope, along with every other Mets fan. And I know I am here ultimately working for our fans, and I do not take that responsibility lightly. There are far too many people who have impacted my career for me to thank all of them here right now. I've had the privilege of working with and for some truly inspiring people. But what I do want to do right now is call out a few folks with some Mets ties who helped me at the earliest stages of my career. Jerry Perone and Howie Wolpoff, who were with the Brooklyn Cyclones, and gave me my first opportunity in pro ball, allowed me to have a really fun summer in Brooklyn. Adam Fisher, Craig Marino, John Ricco, Omar, gave me my first chance here with the Mets as an intern, and taught me a lot about how this industry operates and how things work. Over the last couple of weeks, I've thought a lot about my first go around with the Mets. I thought a lot about how much has changed. The owner, our stadium, much of the front office, and certainly all the players. But what hasn't changed is this organization's quest for truly sustainable competitiveness, and ultimately our first World Series championship since 1986. I'm here because I believe that's attainable. That is our goal. And I can assure you we will do everything we can to make it a reality. I'm thrilled to be here. This is my home. It's nice to be back. And I'm happy to take all of your questions. Thanks, Zach.
Thank you. We'll start with Seagulls.
Hey, David, congratulations. You mentioned in the statement, you certainly touched on a little bit here about growing up a Mets fan and how special this particular job is. Can you just describe a little bit more in detail what this organization has meant to you over the course of your life, and again, how special the opportunity is to be the one in charge of leading it moving forward now?
Yeah, I mean, I think, I grew up in baseball, and I think we all have different hobbies or pastimes or things that teach us different lessons in life. And for me, a lot of those lessons came through baseball, and in fact, it came through the Mets. And I spent a lot of time at Shea Stadium as a kid, with family, with friends. I snuck into the ballpark a few times. And so now I appreciate that they're letting me in here without a ticket. But it's humbling that I get to sit here right now, that I get to be a part of leading this organization forward. And I know what this means to our fan base, and it's special for me.
And Steve, you've spoken for years now about not just hiring any president of baseball operations, but the right guy. And I know that you said you heard from people all across the industry that you've got to hire this guy. What in particular did you hear from people as to why he was the right guy?
Well, I mean, a number of things. I mean, it's universal that the people who worked under David loved working for him. So he really was able to establish followership wherever he was. People described him as incredibly smart, thoughtful, open to ideas, new ideas, inclusive, and so it sort of aligns with my thinking and what I like, how I like to run an organization. So it now seemed like a pretty good fit.
Tony, questions for Steve. I think there's been a perception around the game that David would be a good fit here for a long time. I'm curious when his name kind of first crossed your radar, and likewise for David, when did you see this as maybe a potential reality for you?
Well, I came into baseball 3 years ago, and through conversations, there were probably 4 or 5 executives of David's ilk that people talked about. Obviously, just because their names doesn't mean they're available, which meant I was going to stay patient. I was going to wait and make sure that we got the right person as the head of president of baseball ops, and that's what I did. And things have to align. People have to be available, and so this was the opportunity, and so everything kind of came together.
In terms of when did I think?
Just when did you see this as something that could potentially happen for you? Even if just a pipe dream.
Yeah, when I got off the phone with Steve after we agreed to a deal, look, I've been around this sport long enough, and I've worked on deals long enough to know that until you have a deal, you don't have a deal, and things can change. So I tried to stay pretty balanced and not get ahead of myself. When Steve and I first had a chance to meet in mid-August, that's the first time where I really thought, wow, this could be a fit, and this could work. And so really from that point forward, it was at the forefront of my mind.
Bruce. David, welcome. Sustainable competitiveness. When does that begin? 2024, 2025, or beyond?
Our goal is to begin that now. We are going to put together and do our best to put together a team in 2024 that is competitive. And we're going to do it in a way that does not detract from our competitiveness in the future years. That's a needle to thread, but that's our goal, and that should be our goal. We're in the biggest market in the country. We have plenty of resources, and so we're going to aim to put together a competitive club next year that our fans can be excited about, and ensure that we're doing it in a manner and in a way that doesn't detract from those future years.
John left.
Congratulations, David. I'm tempted to ask you how to sneak into a ballpark because I've never been able to do it, but
Tougher to do it now than in 1998.
I would think. Just since I have one question, I want to ask you about Pete Alonso. Obviously, he's a homegrown star, one of the 2 biggest stars on this team, along with Lindor. He's got a year to go before he's a free agent. How do you view the situation with Alonso, and is the fact that he's homegrown, or the fact that he is good in the clubhouse, does any of that weigh into it, or is it all about how good a player he is?
No, I think the entire package weighs into it. So Pete is a great player. He is also good in the clubhouse, and he is also homegrown. All of that matters. I know over the summer there was some trade speculation, and look, I'll just say, I expect Pete to be the opening day first baseman next year. Pete's an important member of this team. He's an important member of this organization, and I think we're really fortunate to have him.
Mike, come on. Steve, over there. All right, how you doing? You kind of hinted all along that Billy was going to stay as the GM. Was that built in to the deal with David, or did David have autonomy on that, and how is that different than picking the manager?
Well, I mean, it's my goal to build up the management talent in this organization. I mean, baseball operations is pretty complicated. I mean, there's a lot of moving parts. And, building a strong management team is paramount to me. And so I viewed it as, 1 and 1 equals, 3. Okay.
question for Steve. In the years before and the years since you bought the team, there's been a lot of turnover at the head of baseball operations, at manager. Why do you believe, and why should fans believe that David and the manager to come are going to be the duo that sort of puts an end to that pattern?
Well, when I'll say it again, when a head of baseball ops comes in, he's entitled to pick his person, and the goal would be to align philosophies, and you would expect that. And so, there's no guarantees, right? But I expect David to be here for a long time, and I would hope we pick a manager who's aligned in that way also.
Bill Latson.
Congratulations, David. I spoke to Omar Minaya this morning, and he said that you worked in the scouting department with Sandy Johnson. I'd like to know, what did you learn from Sandy and Omar, and do you take some of that philosophy from them to the current Mets?
Yeah, absolutely. I think I've tried to take philosophies from every one of my stops in baseball. One of the things I've noticed throughout my stops is that every leader I've worked for did things a little bit differently. And they all found success in different ways. And so different skill sets can get you there. And certainly the subjective evaluation component of our game is really important and remains important and will continue to be important. Our goal here is to have the best in class, to use a phrase that I know Steve uses regularly, across our organization, both on the objective and subjective sides of the game. I think we can do that, and I'm looking forward to meeting our staff that's already here and then moving forward with them.
Joel Sherman on the left. Steve, for you, I realize it's a long, winding road from 3 years ago to today. I'm wondering from
Sort of dog years.
Yeah. But from the moment that David announced last year that he wasn't going to stay running baseball operations with the Brewers, did you at that point stop looking for someone else, thinking this was your man? And can you take us through that chronology? If not, have you talked to other people? Who were they, etc.?
Well, listen, David and I first met in August, right? So while he seemed like a reasonably good candidate, until you actually meet somebody and get to know them, it's impossible to know whether he's the guy. And so, it's also a question of did we get along? Did we share similar philosophies? And all that was to be determined. So it was my goal eventually, obviously at some point to fill this position. But you never know if it was going to be David or somebody else until you actually get in a room with somebody and, have these conversations and flesh out, philosophies. It's a good question. I no serious discussions with anybody.
Addie on the right.
Hi, David. You stepped down last year from this same role. I just want to know why it was the right time for you to step down last year and why it's now the right time for you to step into this role and the right team for you with this role now.
Yeah, when I stepped down last year, it was really with the intentions that I laid out at that time. I was ready to take a step back. I was ready to spend more time with my family. And I needed some space to reflect on sort of where I was from a career perspective, what had gone well, what hadn't gone well. And it's really tough to do all of that when you're in the moment and the day-to-day and the intensity that these jobs require. And at that point, I wasn't sure that I was going to jump back into this seat. And it needed to be a pretty special opportunity. It needed to be the right place, not only for me, but for my family. And this is probably one of the few, if not the only, opportunity that would have allowed me to do that.
Tim Britton on the left.
For David, going off an earlier question about turnover, there are a lot of people in this organization hired by different front office regimes. How do you go about creating kind of that philosophical alignment between all of them, the people you bring in, and how long does that process take?
Yeah, I view the fact that there are people from multiple regimes here as a feature, not a bug. That's a good thing for us. We've got different perspectives. We've come from different training. And as long as we respect that about each other, and we understand that different segments of our organization are going to view the problems we face a little bit differently, that's a really good thing. So I'm excited about that. And I think that's going to make us better.
And then, given your contractual situation, how much were you able to familiarize yourself with this organization in the last couple of weeks?
Not a ton. Today's day one, so I've got plenty of work to do, beginning right when we get out of here.
Steve on the right. Steve, you've spent historic amounts of money to get the Mets to where you wanted them to get to. It didn't work on that plan. During the deadline, you talked about maybe shifting that philosophy. How is that going to look going forward? The expenditure and the financial resources you're going to put into the payroll for next year, and how does David, coming from Milwaukee, who is not used to operating in that fashion, how is that going to work between the way he operated in Milwaukee and how you spend money?
All that's TBD. We try to keep the conversations on a philosophical level rather than getting into the details. And so all that needs to be figured out. And one thing, it's clear, at least especially this year, so we're not the only team that spent a decent amount of money and maybe didn't work out the way we had hoped.
Thank you, Steve. You finally said it. You're not the only team that spent a ton of money that didn't make the playoffs. Thank you.
The best team we can, and cost is not necessarily the determinant of success or not.
Do you expect to be spending at the top end of baseball again, Steve, as far as that goes?
The answer is, we're going to be competitive, and but I'm not going to get out in front of that decision. I've got a new person here who's going to help me think about things, and I look forward to having those conversations.
And along those same lines, David, how do you look at payroll and investing in a team as far as building a winner? As Steve said, many teams did that, and it didn't work out for them this year.
Yeah, so having resources is an advantage, right? I don't want to confuse correlation with causation, where you spend. It's not the case that you spend money and therefore you're going to lose. But look, we have the resources to compete at the top end of free agency. Steve's proven that. That's an advantage for us, and at the appropriate times, we're going to use that advantage. But it has to be at the appropriate times, and it has to be for the right players. And that may surface this offseason, or it may not. There are going to be off seasons where the top of the free agent market makes sense, and there are going to be off seasons where it doesn't, and we're going to have to evaluate them each off season in the construct of where we are as an organization, what our team looks like, and go from there. But look, I'm excited that we have the resources we do. We're going to do everything we can to use them to the best of our ability, while recognizing that the goal here is sustainable success. And as long as we can use our resources to help us do that, that's wonderful.
On the left.
Hey, David, when you took over in Milwaukee, you made a bunch of transactions that first offseason. Just from an evaluation standpoint, what could you learn or take away from that experience that you could apply to this one, considering the amount of roster decisions that are ahead of you?
From what can I learn from the Milwaukee experience of
that first offseason?
So I think it's helpful that I've gone through it once before, and I understand the volume of information that's going to be coming at me really quickly here, the number of people I have to meet, and the baseball calendar doesn't wait for anyone. So before we know it, the World Series is going to be over, and we're going to have to start making decisions. So yeah, I think the fact that I've gone through it once before helps me here. And I probably have a little bit better understanding of what the path for me needs to be over the next 4 weeks to get up to speed.
What will you be prioritizing in a manager?
In a manager? Look, I view the managerial position as one of true partnership. Someone who is working side by side with me and the rest of our baseball ops group. And the has so many responsibilities these days that it is a big job. But first and foremost is the ability to manage people, manage personalities, and create and facilitate an organizational culture where people enjoy coming to work and work hard. And so that's at the top of my list.
We'll do a few more questions over here on the right, Mike. David, congratulations and welcome. In Milwaukee, you built a reputation. You were able to build a very strong pitching staff, partly by finding some pitching in maybe places that other teams weren't looking. Do you view pitching as the first priority here, and how are you able to do? Can you do it similarly here, the way you did it in Milwaukee?
So from a prioritization standpoint, I don't know. I need to get under the hood a little bit, talk with our group, understand internally here, what we think we do well and where we think there are areas for improvement. I'm looking forward to doing that. And can you do what the Brewers have done here in New York? I think we can develop good starting pitching here, absolutely, but it's going to look different than the way Milwaukee has done it. It has to. No two organizations are the same. The personnel in two organizations aren't the same. The Brewers have done it in a certain way, and it doesn't mean that we're necessarily going to follow that exact blueprint. We have to create our own blueprint here, and I think we will.
Two more, one from Disha on the left.
Hi, David. What is your relationship with Billy, and sort of what went into that decision to keep him on leading this front office with you?
Yeah, so Billy and I have had, I think, a really nice relationship going back years as competitors. Talking to each other, whether it's about transactions or just about industry events. I have a lot of respect for the experience he has in this game, the experience he has in New York, and I'm looking forward to working with him.
And lastly, Mark on the left.
Hey, David, congrats. Just following up on the manager, is there someone that you have in mind, or kind of how wide will you cast that net?
No, there's no one I have in mind. We are going to cast a wide net. We're going to have a real process. We're going to, at some point, interview candidates of varying backgrounds. And I imagine we'll interview candidates who have both been major league managers before and those who have not. So the point here is finding the right person who we believe can grow with the organization and hopefully be here for a long time.
Thank you very much. At this point, we're going to do a photo opportunity with Steve, David, and Billy. If you come up, will the riders please assemble to the right following the photo opportunity?
All right, guys. So that was the press conference for David Stearns as the new president of baseball operations. 3 things I took out of it. Number 1, he is one confident son of a bitch. That's a good thing, right? He didn't talk from a piece of paper as Shay decides to hang out once again. Hey, Shay. He's being very cuddly today for some reason. I don't know. Why are you so cuddly, huh? All right. So, sorry about that, guys. So, he's confident. That's one thing. The second thing, he talked about Pete Alonso. He says Pete Alonso is going to be the first baseman next year. Said a lot of nice things about Pete Alonso. Sorry about that. 1 second. All right. Said a lot of nice things about Pete Alonso, a leader, homegrown, all that stuff, right? And the third thing he talked about was quote unquote partnership with the manager, right? That is consistent with what almost every team does in baseball now. They partner up. Everything is mutual agreement, conversations, and talks with each other about probably lineups, bullpen, rotation, situations, giving guys days off, all that stuff. So that was the 3 things I took out of it. He's very confident. I love the fact that he didn't speak from a piece of paper. You could tell he spoke it from the heart, from his mind. I mean, he went to Harvard. He's not stupid, right? But a lot of these guys, looking down at a paper, thanking 450 people. He thanked a few people, but you see that it means something to it. And Steve Gelbs is getting to talk to Stearns right now. Let's listen up, and then we'll talk about Stearns a little more.
Was there a moment where it did hit you on a deeper level that, again, now you were that rare fan that gets to actually be the one running the franchise that you love?
Yeah, I think when the news leaked a couple of weeks ago, when it became public, and just the amount of outreach I got from friends and family here.
All right, so it's a lot of the same stupid questions. So that's things that I got to take out of it, right? They couldn't ask him about other players from other teams because, you know, even guys that are going to be free agents, they're not free agents until after the World Series. So they can't ask him about that. Obviously, they can ask about Pete Alonso. They can ask about the rotation, you know, his philosophy. Steve Cohen says their philosophies, what they want their philosophies to be as an organization was mutual. So that's a good sign. And again, he talked about it, right? He didn't make no guarantees, which also I like. And can we be honest about this? They've been talking for a very long time, because back in June when Steve Cohen had that press conference, you know, to calm everybody down, he talked about, you know, about the team, you know, believing in Buck, believing in Billy and all that stuff, and talked about being competitive. And that's the same word David Stearns used, being competitive. Again, he also said, which I really like, was he says, well, in New York, it's not like being in Milwaukee, right? He goes, resources is not a bad thing. It's good to have resources as well. So, I mean, that was just funny how, like, you know, like his way of going about it was a little different when it talked about resources in Milwaukee, right? We understand that. But the way, look, you've seen how we try to build in Milwaukee. He couldn't just sign whoever. He might have liked a lot of guys that were free agents, but couldn't sign them because the owner didn't want to spend, right? So he had to go a different route. He had to put a good staff together, a good bunch. You okay there? You all right? You're jumping around. Sorry. Sorry about my camera. My cat decided to knock it out. Of course. Sorry about that. I'll be right there. See if it works. All right, it doesn't work. There we go. Let's see what happens here. Uh-oh. That's not good. Well, if it does come back, we'll find out if it does come back. Oh, boy. All right, guys. Let me just go to something else. All right. All right, guys. Sorry about this. All right. So I got to use my laptop camera since my cat decided to knock out the camera, but that's okay. All right. So we're back. This guy's going crazy right now. All right. So sorry about that. So with that said, his philosophy is going to be different from what he had in Milwaukee than what he's going to do here, right? Because there might be guys that he actually liked as a free agent but couldn't sign him because of money purposes, right? But we know what he did well in Milwaukee, and that was pitching staff, bullpen, and starting rotation. You'll see in the playoffs, the Brewers are going into the playoffs with one of the better pitching staffs in baseball. All right, that might not translate into a world championship, because I don't think their offense is good enough, because they're a low average, high home run hitting team that strikes out a ton. So, and his philosophy in Milwaukee was power and pitching. Can you bring that over to New York? Absolutely. But the power and pitching could look a lot different, because if he's very focused on getting pitching and the guys he likes, it's going to take free agency and trades. And also, you know, there's a lot of talk about Ohtani. You know, they didn't bring it up because they can't talk about Ohtani. But David Stearns seems like the type of guy that would love Yamamoto, a guy who would want Ohtani. You know, now that he has the resources to do all that, he might not like Yamamoto and love Ohtani, or vice versa, or both. So that's something that we're going to have to look at when we're looking at the Mets and David Stearns, and how's he going to go about it. Again, and I don't know who the reporter was, but the reporter brought it up. There's a lot of different people from a lot of different high executives over the years. You fire a lot of GMs, you fire a lot of, people that were running things in the Mets front office. You're going to have a lot of people here and there from other regimes. And that is something that Stearns is going to have to deal with, and we'll know how he's going to deal with it very soon, right? If he's going to fire people, let people go, bring in his own people, right? He's got to put together a whole new minor league, basically executive branch, basically of the Mets minor league system. They fired a lot of developmental people, so that's something that Stearns have to deal with. But I really can't wait until the offseason gets started. Again, we just got the playoffs starting tomorrow, and I will be doing live streams during the playoff game. So look out for the channel and make sure you hit on that notification button on YouTube so you get the alerts when I'm going to go live or post a video. So the good things about David Stearns is that I like that he's confident. He's not afraid to say what he needs to say. He's very confident. I like that. Very confident. He didn't speak from a piece of paper. You could tell he spoke from the heart and from his mind, which is really good. He also actually he brought up Alonso, and before we go, he brought up Alonso. He said, yeah, Alonso's homegrown, he's talented, and he will be our first baseman next year. Didn't get more into details, which I also like. So, he talked about a partnership when it came to a manager, which is what baseball is doing now. It's a group effort, a bunch of minds come together, basically every game to come up with lineups, bullpen usage, giving guys days off. It's a partnership. So, and again, that's why I do believe Craig Counsell is going to be there. And before I go, make sure you vote on the poll. Who do you think the Mets manager should be going forward? So, David Stearns, day one of the job, talked about stability, talked about what he believes. He didn't make no guarantees, which I like a lot. He's a very confident, smart individual that did run an organization in Milwaukee, worked with a lot of good people. He talked about that, getting from the intern, moving his way on up. He worked with a lot of great people. He has a very good relationship with Billy Epler, which is good. I think Billy Epler can be useful in the Yamamoto and Ohtani sweepstakes. We'll see what happens with that. So, David Stearns, 5 years, $10.5 million a year, one of the highest paid executives in baseball. So we'll see how that's going to go. And I do apologize about the camera. My cat decided to go crazy for a few minutes and knocked out the camera. So I'm going with the laptop camera at the moment. So once again, guys, thank you for tuning in to the David Stearns press conference. Officially, the president of baseball operations, as of today, October 2nd, the Mets offseason begins today. That involves staff. That involves other executives. That involves coaching staff, managers, developmental staff in the minor leagues. That all can start right now. David Stearns got a big task. A failed season for the New York Mets. A failed organizational group effort, basically. Does he believe in his core? We'll find out very quickly, because one last guy that needs a contract is Pete Alonso. We're going to know over the next probably month or so how serious David Stearns is signing Pete Alonso. But he needs to build a rotation. He needs to build a bullpen. And we see what he's going to do with the lineup a little bit, because there is holes to fill. Does he like the prospects? We don't know. They're not his guys. There's no emotional connection to Beatty or Mauricio or Alvarez or Vientos or anybody else in the system right now. So he's going to put his mark on this franchise. What is he going to do? We will see in the coming weeks and months going through the 2024 offseason. With that said, guys, thank you for tuning into the David Stearns press conference live right here on the channel. Don't forget, guys, the Mets Roundtable podcast tonight. We have a lot to talk about. Of course, about David Stearns and about the season in review. Nelson, Chris, Hayden, and myself, Mets Roundtable, 8 o'clock tonight. Make sure you tune in. Thank you guys for watching. And as always, Mets fans, let's go Mets for 2024. Have a great night, guys. See you later tonight. Mets Roundtable Podcast, 8 p.m. Have a great day, guys. Let's go Mets.
Meet the Mets, meet the Mets. Step right up and greet the Mets. Bring your kiddies, bring your wife. Guaranteed to have the time of your life because the Mets